Alright, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and we have some sad news today. Defensive end Chase Young has been placed on the reserve PUP list now. He was already on the active PUP list, but that required him to take up a roster spot. Now that he's on the reserve PUP list, he will no longer take up a roster spot, but he will have to miss at least a minimum of the first 4 games of the season, the first 4 weeks. And there were other Commander roster moves as well that got us down to 81 players. Remember, every Tuesday there are cuts by 4 p.m. We went ahead and got ours out the way early while some other teams are still trying to figure out who they're going to release and things like that. So we're going to also break down the other roster moves that were made. Certain guys getting sent to IR, certain guys getting released, and another player getting sent to the reserve PUP list along with Chase Young. Of course, we had great news yesterday with Logan Thomas coming off of the PUP list, but now we add 2 players to it, including Chase Young. And of course, we got to dive into who's going to step up, who's going to get the majority of the snaps in place of Chase Young. And of course, it's going to be a nice rotation of people that's going to kind of make up for what Chase Young did. And then we also got to discuss the games that Chase Young's going to miss and how much he'll be missed in these games, especially 2 division games. And is it time for us to probably look into bringing a veteran in? Do we trust the guys that we currently have on the roster to hold it down? That Chiefs performance with the starters in that preseason game on Saturday makes me question it a little bit. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, make sure you pull up every Friday to the Broadcast Podcast, where we discuss everything funny going on, anything music, sports, anime, gaming, whatever. If it's funny, we talk about it. Also pull up in the chat and ask whatever topics you may want us to touch on and all of that type of stuff. Also, make sure you pull up every Sunday at 6 p.m. for the call-in show, where y'all call in and you voice your opinions about the Commanders, either positive or negative or both, and ask whatever questions you may have. I know a lot of comments and videos, I don't get a chance to read all of them or reply to all of them. That's the perfect time to call in and ask whatever questions you may have had in the comment sections of any of the videos that you've watched as well. And without further ado, let's get it. Well, like I already said, Chase Young is going from the active PUP list, which takes up a roster spot, to the reserve PUP list, which requires him to miss at least 4 games. And that's why the move was made. They wanted to open up a roster spot. They already felt like he wouldn't be able to play within the first 4 games anyway. So they preferred to just go ahead and put him on the reserve now to keep that 1 spot for whichever player they really want to keep on this team. And that probably says a little bit more about the players that they like on the back end of the roster, and as far as giving everybody a chance to compete, especially in this upcoming preseason game against the Ravens, more than how bad Chase Young is hurt. But I mean, Ron Rivera has already been saying since the beginning of training camp that don't expect him to play week 1. Maybe it may take at least a month into the regular season until we see him, and this further proves that. And then plus, like I've been saying, I feel like all of these injuries that we've been dealing with, honestly, if we had to play a Super Bowl tomorrow, everybody, including Logan Thomas, even before he came off the PUP list yesterday, I've been saying for a couple of weeks now that I think they would all play except for Chase Young. I've been saying except for Chase Young over and over again. Again, if there was a Super Bowl tomorrow, I feel like the majority of these guys dealing with injuries, like 90-something% of them, would probably play, especially a lot of the starters. But we're just being overly cautious currently, especially with like Cole Turner and his hamstring injury. He shouldn't be out this long, but we're also not trying to showcase his skill set and how we use him before we get to the regular season, so that we can catch some teams off guard using them as like a secret weapon. And then just out of nowhere, Carson Wentz has this favorite red zone target in Cole Turner, and teams don't really expect it. But again, back to my point, I've been saying that everybody's injuries aren't as bad as they seem. We should be pretty optimistic with the majority of the injuries on this team. But Chase Young, on the other hand, even though I'm not pessimistic about it, being completely realistic, I didn't expect him to play week 1 at all. Now, he has been practicing and going through certain drills and dealing with the dummies and trying to explode off his stance and stuff like that. But in one of the clips that I uploaded in one one in the training camp practices. You know how I do my daily uploads of all of the clips that I can get for training camp. When he was attacking the bags and the dummies, I mean, it just didn't look like he was his explosive self yet. But he's able to walk around just fine and things like that. But, you know, football shape is different from regular life shape. Because I remember one point, I'll never forget, when I was way younger, I saw like Trent Williams on the sideline, and he was apparently hurt and like out for like the majority of the season or something like that. But he was walking just fine on the sideline. So as a normal human being, he's good. Probably no real pain, nothing. But real life shape is completely different than football shape. Chase Young walking around signing autographs and yelling on the sideline, hyping up the team, the defense, the offense, everything like that. That's completely different than actually going out there and playing in games, especially when you got players out here diving at people's knees. But we're gonna super dive into this Chase Young situation and how we're gonna potentially replace him and all of that. But first, I wanted to also talk about the other move. So along with Chase Young getting put on the reserve, physically unable to perform list, the PUP list, you also have center Tyler Larsen, who's technically the direct backup to Chase Roulier, our starting center, who's also been, you know, dealing with injuries a little bit, sort of ramping up, not practicing in full capacity yet, but he's out there doing team drills and stuff like that. So I'm not worried about him week one wise. And even though Wes Schweitzer technically is a better center than Tyler Larsen, in my opinion, Wes Schweitzer is also a really good guard as well. So Tyler Larsen's technically the direct backup center, because if there's an injury to Trey Turner or Andrew Norwell, which they're both dealing with right now, actually, including Wes Schweitzer as well, but Wes Schweitzer would step in at guard more than likely. But now we're without our direct backup center. So Keith Ishmael is technically the backup, especially with Wes Schweitzer currently injured as well. I mean, Keith Ishmael is getting first team snaps right now, with Chase Roulier again not fully participating in practices. He does some team drill things, but then he's kind of like on a pitch count. And then also the Washington Commanders placed linebacker Nathan Gary on the reserve injured list, and that's interesting for two reasons. First of all, I thought he actually looked pretty good in that Panthers game. He was always around the ball. He was rushing the passer pretty well. He looked pretty decent in coverage. And then I didn't really notice him as much in the Chiefs game, but that's probably because he got hurt in that game. So I'm gonna have to go back and look to see exactly when he got hurt, because I didn't know he was hurt until today, seeing that he got placed on the injured reserve. So that sucks for the linebacker depth. But then my second point is that also sucks for our tight end depth. I mean, I'm joking, but still, I mean, we have been so down bad on tight ends that Nathan Gary at some point last week in training camp practices was literally the third tight end, and I do not believe he's ever played tight end in his life. They just needed somebody to come step in as a body in camp, because all we had was Armani Rogers and Eli Wolf, and that was literally it. So now technically the Washington Commanders have lost another tight end, even though we brought in two more recently, most notably Blanton from the Rams. And then lastly, the other two moves, because again, we had to go down 5 roster spots. Now, because of David Bada being a part of the International Pathway Player Program, we're allowed to have one more roster spot all the way up until the point that we got to cut it down to 53. But when everybody else has 90, we have 91. When everybody else has 85, we have 86. And then today, everybody's going down to 80. We went down to 81. So your first three moves were Chase Young, Tyler Larsen, and Nathan Gary. And then the last two, we released wide receiver Kelvin Harmon and tackle Rashad Hill. And now Rashad Hill, I'm pretty sure he's going to get picked up by a team because he's a veteran tackle that has starting experience. There's some NFL team out there that can use him. And I felt like he wasn't like absolutely terrible in the preseason games that we saw him. He was definitely better than I expected. But of course, there were other guys that were better, so I understand why he was released. And then Kelvin Harmon, man, I mean, I just didn't really see the pathway to him making the roster anyway. And so, I mean, as much as I really like Kelvin Harmon and I truly believed in his talent, especially after we drafted him and his contested catch ability, I just feel like Cam Sims and the tight end group pretty much take away some of his utility. He's not as special anymore because Cam Sims is stepping up as a receiver, and he finally got some looks before the month of November. I mean, that was amazing in itself. The fact that Taylor Heineke started throwing them the ball, and it's only August. So maybe Cam Sims will finally be heavily involved in this offense, especially with Carson Wentz, who prefers bigger targets. And so you would think that would mean more opportunities for Kelvin Harmon, but then we also have like 4 or 5 tight ends who can also be great targets for Carson Wentz as well. Our tight end group is really deep, and, you know, sadly we lost one in Nathan Gary, but still, like Kelvin Harmon, you being a contested catch guy, and then he's really not even that tall. He's only 6'2". He's closer in height to Terry McLaurin than he is Cam Sims, but he does play bigger than his actual size is. But still, I was rooting for Kelvin Harmon, but there was just too many guys doing the same thing he can do plus more, because Cam Sims also contributes on special teams as well. And then our tight ends are also tight ends. They can block better than Kelvin Harmon can, especially in line wise. And then Armani Rogers at tight end is more athletic, and quicker and more explosive than a Kelvin Harmon. So it's just, again, I was rooting for him. I didn't see a way that he would make this roster anyway. But now back to Chase Young. This situation really sucks because you can argue that we don't necessarily need him against the Jaguars or Lions, even though I keep trying to tell people do not sleep on those two teams. Both of those teams have gotten way better. The Lions from players that they picked up, and the Jaguars from a mix of players that they picked up, and then Trevor Lawrence just becoming a better quarterback. I think he's going to take a pretty big leap going into his second season and finally starting to show flashes and more consistency of that quarterback that people expected out of him, being like the next Andrew Luck type of thing. I feel like we actually are pretty lucky to play them week 1 rather than in the middle of the season. But again, you can argue that we don't need those guys, but I mean, anytime we're looking at a team like, oh yeah, that should be an easy win, those are the same teams looking at us like we're the easy win out of their entire schedule. But then it really gets bad with week 3 against the Eagles when we're going against a mobile quarterback in Jalen Hurts. We really need Chase Young that game more than any of these other games. And then the Cowboys game, I mean, just 2 divisional games, you want to have your best players out there regardless. But again, that Eagles game is probably the game we're going to miss Chase Young the most with his athleticism, because James Smith-Williams is nice, and we're going to dive into who's going to replace Chase Young while he's gone for the first 4 weeks, but he's nowhere near as athletic as Chase Young. And in pursuit of like a Jalen Hurts trying to scramble outside of the pocket, Chase Young and Montez Sweat are our best bets of containing him and getting him down before he can make any amazing plays happen. So again, out of the 4 games, the Eagles game, we're going to miss him the most, but we're really going to miss him all of these games. And both of the divisional games are definitely the ones we're highlighting where we really need these other guys to step up. And it just sucks too, because now this will technically be the 3rd season that Chase Young has never played an entire season. Remember, he played 15 games as a rookie, had 7.5 sacks, 9 games as a sophomore last year, 1.5 sacks up to that point. Very disappointing even before the injury. And so now he'll miss at least the first 4 weeks. So maybe in his 4th year, he'll finally play an entire NFL season, but we'll see. I mean, because the potential is definitely there. He's only scratching the surface. He's one of the most athletic players in the entire NFL, and you don't even need all of that athleticism to be a great edge rusher. It's more technique and things like that. Chase Young is more athletic than both the Bosa brothers combined, but those guys are just so effective because their technique and everything mental is A1. If Chase Young can even gain half of that, even if he doesn't come back 100% as athletic as he used to be, him being 80% as athletic as he used to be before the injury is still more athletic than both of the Bosa brothers. And so there's just no excuse. He just needs to come back ready, more technically sound and all of that type of stuff. Hopefully Warren Sapp's teachings have been getting to him. Hopefully Ryan Kerrigan has helped him a lot, because Chase Young and Montez Sweat had better seasons while Ryan Kerrigan was still like a veteran leader currently on the team. And hopefully Ryan Kerrigan being involved with coaching a little bit, even though he's technically not been hired on full time yet, hopefully that brings greatness out of both of those guys when Chase Young returns. And then of course when Chase Young is out there, it makes things easier for Montez Sweat and the rest of the defensive line. So we just can't wait to have him back as soon as possible. But of course, as of right now, if we're not looking to sign an outside veteran, James Smith-Williams is your direct backup to Chase Young, who's going to take the majority of the snaps. Now, I don't think anybody is just going to be a direct replacement for Chase Young and get as many snaps as Chase Young would have, but it's going to be split up by multiple guys, and James Smith-Williams will be the guy getting the majority of the cut. And then you also have Casey Toohill, who's probably the direct backup to James Smith-Williams, but of course you also have William Bradley King and Shaka Toney. And Shaka Toney is my favorite probably out of the group as far as pass rushing goes, especially because nobody else on this team has the explosion, speed, and bend off the edge like Shaka Toney has. Love Montez Sweat, love Chase Young, but nobody else is as quick and as bendy as he is. He has the most of that out of our entire team. And like I keep saying, I feel like Shaka Toney needs to be on the field more in general, because I believe he can cover better than he gets credit for. But at the same time, his best skill set is pass rushing. So hopefully with our offense being more explosive, we can finally start to play with some leads, which will allow our defense to focus on rushing the passer. And then a guy like Shaka Toney can be on the field more because of that. And even when Chase Young returns, Chase Young and Montez Sweat will be way better and far more productive when our offense plays with leads, because their main objective can be go get the quarterback rather than playing both the run and the pass at the same time. They can focus on just one thing, pin their ears back, and just go penetrate and go get the quarterback. But hopefully some really good, at least decent veteran gets cut, and maybe we'll pick that guy up in place of Chase Young. It'll be really nice. James Smith-Williams, Casey Toohill and that ensemble of edge rushers are decent, but it's not ideal. So who knows, maybe a veteran edge rusher from another team gets cut and then we can pick them up, and then maybe they're just a permanent part of our rotation for the remainder of this year. Maybe we sign a guy to like a cheap 1-year prove-it deal and then they go and ball out playing for their next contract. I think that would be the ideal situation, but who knows who's even available, who's going to end up getting cut. I mean, as of right now, it looks like D Ford and Jason Pierre-Paul, Takaris McKinley, Everson Griffin. I know y'all remember Pernell McPhee, Robin Kondichi, and a list of other names are out there available right now. And then again, preferably it would be like a nice, better option that gets cut by a team, because I don't believe any of those guys I just named are like truly the answer. But who knows, man? Hopefully the Washington Commanders can figure it out. Hopefully James Smith-Williams, Shaka Toney, and Casey Toohill can step up and truly make up as a collective for what we've lost in Chase Young for the first 4 games of the season. Also, the Washington Commanders brought in free agent defensive lineman Malcolm Brown for a tryout on Sunday. Apparently he hasn't been signed yet, so I'm not sure if it went wrong or right, but remember, he was a former first-round pick out of Texas by the Patriots in the 2015 draft, and he's made trips around the league on several teams. But even last year in 2021, he appeared in all 17 games for the Jaguars. He recorded 57 tackles, 4 tackles for losses, 2 sacks, and 1 pass deflection. Pro Football Focus felt like he was the 99th interior defender out of 108 qualifying defenders. And of course, this is not potentially a Chase Young replacement. This is an interior defensive lineman for depth. But again, we didn't sign him, and we just made roster cuts. We moved 5 players off the roster in various ways to get from 86 to 81. We didn't move 6 to open up a spot for him, so I'm assuming that we probably will not sign him. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please leave a like on this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. Of course, let me know how you feel about this whole Chase Young situation, and even Kelvin Harmon and Rashad Hill not making the team, and another couple of guys going on the pup list and injured reserve, and Nathan Gary. It's really chaotic right now, but again, I promise y'all, be optimistic. It's really not as bad as it seems. I mean, some of the guys going on the IR and pup list, those are pretty bad, but the guys that currently aren't, I think they're just being very overly cautious with a lot of those guys. And if we had to play a Super Bowl tomorrow, I think they'd be just fine. But of course, I appreciate all of the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose name you see scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.